Oh boy, we have so much to talk about. All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Aspect Reacts here on the Aspect Network. I'm one of your hosts, Sean Hussey, and joining me once again to discuss the latest and greatest in entertainment is Alex Batts. Alex, good to have you back on the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. A little stressed about football, but it happens.
It's all right. We've
It's
got
all
we've
right.
got Sunday
We're
Night Football up. No live
yeah,
reactions to that. Just to the Penguin.
yeah,
But I'll let you kick it off.
yeah. So we're gonna be discussing our overall thoughts on the fourth episode of The Penguin. So Sean, we'll start with you. What did you think about Gentani?
Oh boy. Okay. So obviously all week, we've been messaging back and forth. I think I may have even talked a little bit about it on the episode last week that, there has been a lot of excitement about this episode from people who have gotten to see it in advanced screenings.
Mhm.
Warner Brothers, HBO, we are available for advanced screenings so that this content can come out even faster to our audience just for what it's worth. And it certainly lived up to expectations. I don't even really know where to start. I know I usually start these weeks and I'll spitball some stuff and we'll talk about it. But like I at one point looked over at my roommate when we were watching this episode. I was like, I don't even feel like I'm watching the same show anymore. Like I was like, what is happening? And like in the best way possible, right? Like they are executing on the highest of levels, which is,
Oh, it's
I mean,
unreal.
it's just ridiculous how good this show is and how it continues to get better week over week. And, as we talked about last week and, we had sort of called out the week before, like as predicted, this is totally Sophia Falcone's episode. I don't even
Mhm.
know if Oz will get mentioned much in this episode. Our reaction, we'll talk about it a little bit, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Um,
it's got like 5 minutes of screen time, maybe,
yeah,
maybe like 5 to
and
8
they're an
minutes.
important 5 minutes for sure.
Oh yeah,
But
100%.
certainly, this is Sophia Falcone's episode, and just so impressed, continuing to fire on all cylinders. But like, I feel like I really want to start with what I said a second ago, which is just like I feel like I was watching a totally different show for the last hour, and like not in a bad way. Their
Mhm.
ability to sort of pivot stylistically, and to serve the story in the best way possible for this episode was incredible. And they talked a lot about it in the behind the scenes, just,
Which
you
those
know,
are so good. Those have
yeah,
been so
they're
good in
excellent.
this.
Do you watch more HBO than I do, I
They
guess?
do them
Like,
for I don't know if it's every HBO show, but I know they do them for all the Thrones shows as well. Like, those always have an inside the episode thing.
and I
So, I
feel
don't know if
like
that's just, like, a modern era HBO thing that they've started doing that. Like, I can't imagine that, like, The Sopranos has that, but I don't know. I never
sure.
seen
I feel
it.
like I feel like True Detective season 4 had
Yeah, because the
something
original
like it.
True Detective did not. The
Yeah,
first
I
season
feel
did
like the
not.
new season did a little bit. Um Either way, really glad those exist. And just like
Fantastic insight.
it's clear that they're taking influence. I'm not going to say it's from Andor cuz like TV has done this for years. But similarly to like something that most recently I think you and I would be familiar with on like something like Andor, that they're sort of having directors and cinematographers and editors come in and batch episodes, and sort of just
Yeah.
see specific visions through. Obviously, Lauren LaFranc is sort of running the ship as the showrunner, but we
Mhm.
we have a new director for these episodes, this episode and the next.
Same thing with
Um,
the director of photography for this
yeah,
episode and next week.
yeah, which is awesome. And I think we didn't see the editor this week, but I know in the past behind the scenes the editors have sort of been episode earmarked. um
Mhm.
and so I think that really shows, right, being able to sort of take a different vision for the show, and just again really. And I think the moment that it really clicked was sort of Sophia's integration into Arkham. I was like, what is happening? We are watching like a horror movie in real time. And a deeply personal one. And like, there's just so much to unpack here. I've been doing the majority of the talking for the first 5 minutes, so I'm going to hand it over to you. But like,
Mhm.
what sort of overall like really stood out to you on this episode in particular?
Yeah, so this is tough because I wanna keep it kinda broad and say my, like, favorite moment thing for our next segment, but just in general, I mean, I think, what you're saying, the fact that the show is able to so, eloquently is not the right word, efficiently switch gears and bring us to a completely different side of the show, a completely different vibe, and it's able to do it seamlessly because it's already just made us so invested in the characters. And it's like, I don't like the fact that it's a Penguin show, and I don't care about the fact that I got like 6 minutes of screen time with the titular character in this episode is just a testament to how well crafted the episode is and the story is. Yeah, I mean, just getting to see Sophia's full story, getting the knowledge that like she was completely framed for that, and then also the way it's able to tie into the like how Carmine has operated and how we saw him operate in the Batman too. Like that's a really
Yeah, talk
consistent
about that.
character
Yeah,
through line. Like that's just such good storytelling. Like it's
yeah,
so like as soon as those dominoes and puzzle pieces started to go into place, I was like, oh, of course. Like how is this not obvious from the very beginning? And like in retrospect, you're like, oh, it so is. But it's just that little thing. Like in the flashback scene when you see him come into the room and you see those scratches, you're just like, oh shit. Like okay,
yeah.
this is horrendous.
Not to mention, like, and I gotta shout out my roommate Chris for this because he pointed it out. He was like, "That's totally his MO." Because when
Yeah,
Selena
no,
comes to the when he attacks Selena in the Batman,
mhm.
it is
Yeah, exactly.
exactly the same way. And I was
Yeah,
like, "Oh, that's so good."
like her and then her friend before that, like that's just
Yeah,
what he does. Like it's his and just being able to tie that in there and then take it to another level with how he has then framed his daughter for that and the way that that all works out and how the family treats her and like that also puts even more of the like disrespect and the like go away that her family feels towards her, like it puts it in a different light because like they all had an active hand in doing that. Um and so shining that on there and just exploring that more is done so well. Also, I mean, yeah, just being able to spend the whole episode with her, getting to see the complete, and they described it in the inside the episode thing, but like the digression of her character and like how much Arkham transforms her and being able to see it and and experience it so viscerally is just incredibly well done. It's extremely traumatic, and it's also one of the things where Lauren LaFranc said it, but she's as close to a hero as we get in this show. And I feel like you really feel that in this episode. I'm like, damn, I am 100% rooting for you. Like, yeah, you've done some bad stuff, but like, given the circumstances, you're by far the best person, I think, ethically in here. And I think it's really heartbreaking when she's talking to, I forget the little girl's name,
mm,
her niece, I believe, is what
yeah.
the relation is. But whenever she's just
Mm,
like, I think it's her.
probably not because it's probably her cousin's daughter because
Mm,
that's not her sister, right? So that wouldn't be
okay,
her niece.
so like cousin
Anyway, the
removed or
little
something. Some,
girl, yeah,
yeah, the little girl.
second
Whenever she's like,
cousin or something, whatever.
yeah, she's like, "Oh, I did some bad things," and I'm like, "Yeah, but you like," I mean, she explained it well when she's like, "Well, I had to fight back against like the monsters," and you're like, I mean, yeah, that is exactly what to do. Also, by the way, before I forget, super deep cut. Magpie is like
I
a
was gonna
Z
say,
list.
I was gonna
It's
ask you.
yeah, she's like a Z list. Whenever she said that name, I was like, no way. So that's just awesome to see. That's really cool, like deep cut for the comic stuff. Which is always fun to see. I also too like part of me wonders with Ventress and his name. I thought at first it was Ventrist, but I think it's definitely just Ventress. There's no T at the end of there, but that
Yeah, I
immediately
watch with
makes me think
subtitles. I don't think
there's
there's a
no
T at
T.
the end.
But at first I was like, oh, sounds like ventriloquist, which it's not even like that's his real name. It's not. I'm forgetting his name, but it's obviously not the ventriloquist. um, but he's
Doing
interesting. I
a
still,
Cobblepot Cobb situation here.
yeah, right, yeah, yeah. I still don't trust Rush at all. This episode really puts him in the like he's helping her more so thing and seems to be like leaning into that, but I still don't trust it at all.
That's an
um
interesting thought. No, we'll talk about it now. Like, I think that the Rush thing is interesting because we obviously had speculated a little bit on whether or not he was like Calendar Man or like this
mhm,
universe's version of that, and like,
which I don't think is the case now. But
sure, but I also like whether you trust him or not. Like, I don't actually think we're gonna see him again. Like, it feels
that's
like
fair.
his story is kind of done and like his
But like
purpose has been served.
yeah, I can see that.
And also, like, I guess I trust him, but, like, I think he's just proving, not really. Like, he's just proving the point of, like, men are bad. which like this is not the podcast where we're gonna be
Get
like,
into
that's a
that.
woke fucking take. That's no, like, men are bad. Sophia, like,
Mhm.
was twisted and turned by every person in her life. And like Rush is just another example of somebody who like
Didn't do
in
the right
his
thing.
way thought he was meaning well, but like was also contributing
Part
to
of
her
it.
abuse and
Yeah.
trying to find his own personal gain out of it. And clearly that was in a suggestive manner. And I love that she kind of gets one up on him by the end of it. And I don't anticipate seeing him again, but there is a chance that with like Bliss and Sophia trying to take control, well, not even trying, Sophia taking control of the family, which we'll fucking talk about,
Yeah.
that he ends up being kind of a part of her council or whatever it may be. So like maybe there is more to come from him. I wouldn't I mean, not that you've wasted him at all. I'd love to see more Theo Rossi in this show. I think that, when you
Yeah.
cast somebody like that, um, there's an opportunity to use him more, but regardless, we'll see what happens with him. But no, not necessarily to be trusted.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely also the fact that I'm very glad that they explicitly stated how long she was in Arkham because I like the whole time I was like, how long did she end up staying here? In like a
I was like, how
decade?
old is she? Like,
God damn, that
yeah.
is crazy. Which also, I don't know if you clocked this, but Alberto was definitely using an iPhone, or like they used iPhone noises for it, which you're not. I like. I know that you
I
know about
roll
this,
my
but
eyes.
but like Apple won't let bad guys use their phones and the thing. But he's definitely using like an iPhone 4 or 5,
Well,
somewhere
maybe
around there.
Alberto's not a bad guy.
I mean, he's not a
Maybe
good
he's not.
guy.
Yeah, but in the grand scheme of things, he's not a
I mean, in
bad guy.
comparison to like the rest of the people in the show, I guess
Well,
he's
we'll
not a
let
bad guy.
HBO and their legal team deal with that. That's not for I don't
But
think
I
that's
did
for
definitely notice that because I
that's
recognized the
interesting.
design on the back of the iPhone. I was like, "That's a 4th or 5th generation," and then also the notification sounds were for sure that. Sorry, that was also me trying to like place it in time because I was like, "Okay, I can
Oh,
see."
sure.
It's fine. But I did think that was funny. But yeah, I'm glad that they put the timeline on it. It also is nice that they're able to fully, which I mean, I expected it to be the case, but that they were able to fully elaborate and explain when Oz and Sophia were talking last week about like him screwing her over in a sense, like essentially, and him being like, I didn't know that was going to happen, and like that's not what I meant to do and stuff. And so getting to see that fully play out, I think was really needed, and it also adds a lot to their dynamic. I also loved them at the beginning, like we said, it's a really important like 5 to 8 minutes between the two of them, but like it hurts because you're like, man, they're like kind of friends. Like they're not friends, but like
But yeah,
the
but you can also, on the flip side of that, for what it's worth, like it is very clear, no matter how helpful Oz is trying to be, that like she does not view him as really more than
as
her
a friend.
driver.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
I
not
mean,
even
yeah,
his friend. Like that. Like even when God, I mean, right after I think they're at the banquet and like he just tries to butt in, like even immediately she's kind of like, you know,
shut up. Yeah,
yeah,
she's like, just stop talking and drive. Like that's your job. Yeah, it's true. But like, I do think that there is. It's nice that they show that kind of like the potential for them to not absolutely hate each other,
sure.
and that definitely makes it a lot more painful whenever there is like huge fracture between them now, and they're actively trying to kill each other.
Yeah, no, that's
um,
fair, which it will be the rest of this season, which I'm looking forward to talking about.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And you called it also last week about the fact that we did get the flip side of that conversation, which also that opening shot was gnarly.
Oh yeah, I
The
mean
reflect,
cinematography in this episode was top notch. Definitely worth flagging. I predicted it wrong last week. I wasn't sure. Maybe I said it last week in the episode, but I was a little bit under the idea that like we were going to just be in full flashback this whole episode. Um
mhm,
and so I didn't actually think we were going to see what played out with the Maronis until next
next
episode.
week.
So I'm glad we got to see that. I think that was an important sort of kickoff point for this episode, and obviously is
Yeah,
going to set us up for the rest of the season. But that was definitely really interesting to see sort of how that played out. And God, Oz is just Oz, man, what are you doing? What are you doing, man?
He's
God, you stepping on your own foot. God, just
it's incredible how quickly he just switches in every situation that he finds himself in.
now
Like,
everyone wants him dead.
yeah. I mean,
He's so
literally
bad,
everyone.
dude.
He's burned all the
Literally.
bridges.
In that teaser next week, it's like, "Just you and me, Vic," and we're like, "Yeah, dude, it is just you
It's
and
just
Vic
you and
right
Vic.
now."
You
It's
better
just
be
you guys.
glad that man did not hop on that bus, like
God. And it adds so much more to, like, why he's so like, "No, we can't save Sophia right now. We gotta get out of here." Like, 'cause
Yeah,
he's like,
because like, he
"Yeah."
just blew that up. He's like, "No, there's really she's the last person we need in this car right now, actually." Like,
God, I think the
but
last thing I wanted to flag for overall, and then obviously we can talk more specifics, and if there was anything else you wanted to flag, was just a really interesting connection point that I don't wanna spend too much time reflecting on how other IPs have been doing it lately, but the interconnectivity between this and the Batman continues to be really impressive.
Mhm.
We could talk a little bit about it in the specifics, but I thought Mark Strong did a good job stepping in for John Turturro.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about that a little bit later, but particularly what I wanted to flag was like the interconnectivity of they talked about the design of Arkham in
Mhm.
the sort of behind the scenes bit, and I want to talk a lot about Arkham in the specifics, but to my actual point, the return and name drop and use of Mackenzie
Oh, dude,
is
so
really
good.
well done. Not
It's
only
so
do you get
good.
the guy back, which is great,
Mhm.
but just like not to be like glup shitto pointing at the screen and being like, "Oh my god, it's that fucking guy," but I definitely was like, "Oh my god, it's
Does
Mackenzie,"
that yeah.
um, and like just really smart storytelling from being able to capitalize on a character that if fans of the show and the Batman would immediately be like, "Wow, really smart storytelling," but also if you're just watching this standalone, you're like, "Oh, cool, corrupt cop."
Yeah.
Um, but also the real understanding, it seems that like all of the Falcons have a real and like all of their, you know, goons. It's the wrong word, but goons for lack of
They're
a better
villains.
term. Like know Mackenzie. Like Oz
Yeah.
immediately is like, I know who you
Kenzie,
are.
what the hell
What are you
he's
doing?
like, "Can you cut the circus down, bro? Like, I'm taking, Sophia home, like, come
Yeah,
on."
and it's just that level of connection, and then obviously how that plays into the Batman, but also just like being really strategic about interconnective storytelling, and even the tidbit of like understanding how Falcone behaved in the Batman and picking up on that, and him and how he treats the women of 44 Below, and obviously we'll talk about him killing his wife and just like all of this other stuff that you're like, wow, what an ability to build upon that story and take a tidbit from that movie and just like make it an MO. And I, I keep saying we'll talk about it, and we will, and I'm very excited to talk about it. But like, even just like I flagged it last week, I think, but she was like, "I'm not the Hangman," and I was like, "Did she mean she's literally not the Hangman, or like is she just saying like that's not who I am?
Mhm,
I am Sophia Falcone. Don't label me as that."
mhm,
And just to see that unfold, and that's where we'll pick up after this break. But like to just see that unfold
mhm.
um in real time, to understand that like the Hangman wasn't like a serial killer that the police were hunting. It was like an image and character that was created as a result of framing Sophia Falcone for the things that her father was doing is
Yeah,
super fascinating, and just was a total twist on what I was expecting, and the way that you think everything's playing out, and the way that they sort of, play with the audience's understanding of context in the situation. Um, is just really fascinating, and I'm sure that's where we're going to pick up after this break. But is there anything else that you wanted to chat before I sort of transition us out of here?
no, just commenting on how well done the Kinsey thing is, and, like, the fact that I mean, even before we see him, like, the name drop of Falcone being like, "I talked to Kinsey, he said the police are, like, working into it," and just, like yeah, just fostering that connection and reminding the audience of it in a way that, as you said, so, like, individually serves this story perfectly, but then adds that further connective tissue towards, like, "Oh, yeah, this dude's been doing this for Falcone for a decade," like, this is his informant in the police and who he's working with, and, like, It just the showing the levels of corruption across Gotham, which we'll get into more, I'm sure, as we talk specifically about Arkham and the just horror show that is.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to take a quick break. But when we come back, we'll dive into some of our favorite moments and also deep dive into the episode a little bit more. So we'll be right back.
Hey, Aspect listener, I'm Kate.
And I'm Alex, enjoying this show here on the Aspect Network.
Then check out Bending the Narrative.
We're your one-stop shop for all things Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Each week, we break down an episode from the series and discuss our favorite moments, with a particular focus on the characters and narrative threads that tie the series together.
In addition to discussing the original series, we're also tackling things from The Legend of Korra to the novels and the comics as well.
Now join us as we travel into the world of Team Avatar and discuss one of the greatest animated series of all time on Bending the Narrative here on the Aspect Network.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to the show. Before the break, we discussed our overall thoughts on episode 4 of The Penguin Cent'anni, which means new beginnings in Italian, I'm assuming, based on context of the episode. I should
I
have
was
looked
about to
that
say,
up.
I thought you Googled
To
it because
new
I did not.
beginnings. Now we want to dive into some of our favorite episodes and moments.
Favorite
moments
episodes?
from tonight's show. It's fine.
You got it.
Alex, where do you want to start?
Dude, Arkham. I mean, I feel like it's the obvious
that's fair.
go-to. How do you not? Okay, so this is bar none the best, not only the best adaptation of Arkham that we've ever seen, I would say.
You say in
I'll
live
even
action?
generally
Wow,
I'll even
that's
throw.
that's a crazy statement. All right,
Yeah,
go
no, because
ahead.
I also, as soon as I said that, I like the games popped into my head.
Yeah, I was like, that's a crazy
But
statement, but go ahead.
but the thing is, right? So this is one, I would say, the best adaptation of Arkham, and even going a step further, maybe the best representation of Arkham, including the comics, except for Arkham Asylum: A Serious House on Serious Earth, because that's like the that's literally like the textbook of Arkham, essentially. Like that's the epitome of the depravity and like the absolute just decaying of your mind that happens when you go into Arkham. And this, I think, shows that in a way that we just straight up have not seen outside of that comic. Like we will see Arkham as this dilapidated, rundown, like obviously messed up place that is not fit for anyone. It's obviously not helping anyone. It's corrupt as hell, and like all of these things, but you don't ever really get into the psychological side of that as much as we do here. And like I think you described it perfectly at the top of the episode of like it straight up just feels like a horror movie. It starts happening to Sophia as she like goes to Arkham, and just seeing the levels of how one just controlled it is, and like controlled in the sense of literally everyone in charge just being the worst person and a part of the abuse cycle that's going on here, and a part of just making it the worst environment you can possibly imagine being forced into. And um this episode just nails that perfectly. Like it's they talk about it in the inside the episode about how they wanted to, one, of course, maintain the visual language that was established in the Batman and get the like octagonal shapes and the cells being super confined and closed and that kind of thing, and how that feels like it's closing in on the inmates, and especially Sophia, of course, in this episode. And you get that, but then even taking it into the way that the sequence of her, having to undergo the electroshock therapy and how that's edited, and her just degrading and degrading more and more, and how disorienting that becomes, and just taking it to the level of breaking her. And I do also love that this episode, I think, even I guess it would be the editing and the trailers more plays with the expectations of like, because we've seen the clips, if you've watched the trailers, of her like covered in blood and knowing that she obviously like does something terrible in here. And I like the way that it plays out in the episode, because it doesn't do it in that moment that you first think it's going to happen. Like they put her one after she is just absolutely beat down in the cafeteria by the other person who is not named. But like after that happens, they like give her the chance to like fight back and get revenge, essentially, when they like put her in the room and out of her chains and chain the other woman up and hand her a fork. And I love that she doesn't do it in that moment. Like she's still holding out to the like, I'm innocent, I'm not this person that you're all saying that I am. and how regardless of that, it just does not matter because the system is not built to accommodate that. It's built to be like, no, this is who you are because this is who we're making you. And that's just, um, yeah, like they do an incredible job of showing that. And it's one, heartbreaking and also just horrifying to see. And then that they then follow it up by after she, gets through her 6 months that she needed to do and is then told that she's not getting a trial. She's just going to be forced to stay there. And that's what finally gets her to snap. And I do think, I don't know if it's necessarily implied, but I do. Actually, there's a question for you. Do you think that it's implied that that's the only murder that she commits here? Like, do you think that she has to, that she does that again?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say probably in Arkham,
Yeah,
but like it sort of sets her down the path of
she'll
I don't
do
know if I
that.
don't actually know if she has any bodies post release Arkham. I can't remember now in this episode if she does
I
any
mean,
killing
like
or if
before
she.
the end of the episode, obviously, which we'll
Well,
get
sure, sure,
to.
that's a good point. But like,
She's got a few
does
bodies
she
after
kill that
that.
kid when Oz is tied up to the chair, or does the bodyguard kill that kid?
No, she does kill him. Because
Okay,
remember, she's like that. She's like, and, like you're telling me he did it, and he's like, yeah. And she's like,
right,
bam. And she's like, that's what
right,
you
right,
wanted.
right.
Um,
So yeah, just to answer your question, like I don't know how much more killing she would have done in Arkham, but it certainly is the tipping point that like sets her down the character that we know
mhm,
today, right?
yeah. But yeah, I mean, just the representation of Arkham in this is above anything I could have imagined. Honestly, like one of the thoughts that I had while I was watching the like in the middle of the Arkham sequence, I was like, damn, it's kind of a shame that that Arkham series is not a thing that we're like getting to
That's a
see fully.
great point.
I know that they've talked about how that's like kind of morphed into something else maybe, and so we might, end up be spending more time in Arkham down the road and something. But that was a thought that I had where like in the middle of all that, I was like, damn, they would have absolutely cooked with whatever they were planning with that because this is just unbelievable.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I mean I certainly really appreciated how Arkham was used this episode and like how it relates to Sophia's story and like I don't necessarily know if I mean on in principle like or on in concept the idea of an Arkham series sounds interesting.
Hmm.
After seeing it in the show, like I think it's done such an excellent job with like its purpose and serving the story. I don't know how much more like I could take just like in that world and playing with that, right? And maybe we'll save some of it for the speculation, but like I feel like I have to ask, like we talked about it very early on in episode 1 because of just the implication of it, but like now that we're really diving into Arkham, and you raised a really good point because I hadn't thought about that Arkham spinoff series that had gotten sort of morphed into something else and sort of canceled or pushed, moved around, like whatever it is in
Hmm.
development, like so much or a really key element of what Matt Reeves has built on his universe is, Bruce being the descendant of an Arkham and a Wayne. And
Mm-hmm.
like now that we're seeing what Arkham is in the Batman film played so much on legacy and honoring his parents and I mean that's just a general Batman thing but like particularly with legacy and what the Riddler is playing into and all of these ideas like I feel like we're going to have to push a point whether it's in the sequel or this Arkham series or at some point like such a
Batman's got
theme
to
of
do something
this.
about this.
Yeah, just like this is his legacy just as much as like the Wayne Enterprises is going to be his legacy, right? And we see the repercussions of the Wayne Enterprise being his legacy so often in all sorts of Batman media, but the Dark Knight trilogy in particular rings a bell.
Hmm.
But on top of that, like I wonder if Arkham and its the repercussions of Bruce's legacy are going to be a part of this story moving forward. I don't
That's
know.
a really good point that I honestly hadn't thought of that much. Which is, I think, a really, yeah. There's a lot that you can do there, because I mean, even aside from the now directly like the Bruce being tied to it all. There's just a lot of history in Arkham that you can then explore, especially depending on how far back you want to go. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I do think that that is something though that um, Reeves would definitely be interested in,
Seems like
especially
he's
give
too smart to not like he's too strong of a storyteller to not keep like
that going.
playing in this, or like not wanting this to be a part of sort of his grand plan, I would assume. Like it just seems like it's such a focal point.
Yeah, and especially with the idea. Oh, I lost it. I had a thought, but it just evaporated into thin air.
It's okay.
But yeah, no, I do think that that would be an interesting thing to do and would make a lot of sense. And there's a lot of mileage you can get out of that. And yeah, it's just great. Arkham in this though was fantastic, and I just genuinely couldn't believe what I was saying. Honestly, like to get it in this kind of format and so expertly used. Oh, the thing was, he's so invested in and understands that the locations in Batman are as much a character as
Hmm.
the characters themselves. Like that's this Gotham feels like the most realized Gotham and the most Gotham as a character out of I think any of the adaptations that we've seen. And Arkham continues that trend of like the location informs the characters as much as the other characters around them do. Um, and so I think that that's a really strong recurring thing that they keep going to, and so I think that'll definitely continue going forward. Um, but yeah, all the Arkham stuff was definitely I think the biggest highlight. I mean, that's where we spent a good chunk of the episode. Um, so that kind of goes hand in hand. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I mean
just
excellent work there from the team on just everything that develops there and how that moves on. And we've seen now the women's wing of Arkham, and
mhm.
between the Batman, we've seen a little bit of the men's wing, but it'll be interesting to see how all of that sort of continues to develop as we move on. I think another portion that's really worth discussing and important is just Oz and Sophia's relationship and kind of how that all falls out this episode, and just the creation of this hangman figure. And you know we've talked a lot about how it sort of relates to Falcone, but I think seeing how Oz is wrapped up in all this in a way that, like, I don't know if this was your takeaway, but I don't know, by the end of it was kind of like, oh, what he did wasn't that bad. Like it made it sound like he
Yeah,
really
he
like
definitely
set her
like
up.
he
Um,
definitely did not. Like I think
yeah,
that he definitely genuinely like I think that it was bad in the sense that what she says in the car is accurate, whereas like if you were actually looking out for me, you would have come to me, not my
right.
father. Like he definitely did step over her
And he's
in the
looking out for
hopes,
himself totally.
yeah, like obviously in the hopes of getting in Falcone's good graces, which it obviously worked, and we know that that's what ends up happening. Um, but yeah, it's not. I do think that his reaction is genuine in the moment when he's like,
Oh,
"What is
totally.
happening here? Like this is not. Let her go," and all of that stuff, and kind of like not believing what's happening as he's watching it happen. And I do think that he like, and especially even harkening back to last week when he's like, I'm sorry. I don't remember his exact words, but he's like genuinely being like, yeah, what happened to you was terrible, and I'm sorry for that. Like, that's awful. Um, I think that's a rare moment of Oz being genuine, where he does feel that guilt from that. That doesn't stop him from then also, of course, being a terrible person. But
Sure.
I think that just adds further layers to him and to their relationship. And yeah, I agree that what he did there, while it is for sure him just looking out for himself, like it's not. There was no malice there. I don't think it was more like a sin by like ignorance or
Sure.
um
I
like
mean, he just continues to step on his own foot in his own
yeah,
toes.
yeah, like if he
Um,
just would have not done that, it probably would have been a lot better.
yeah, I mean, but also he probably wouldn't have gotten, the power position that he would have wanted had he not
Yeah.
made that move either. So, it's interesting to see, how Oz continues to rise into power and the way that he, continues to screw people over and twist and turn, and nobody seems to trust him. And it's something that has continued to be a point that has been well made. And, I'm sure we'll spend some time on it in speculation. The show will continue to spend on it, but it's only a matter of time until Vic realizes that, Oz is not somebody to be trusted either. Or, you know, conversely, like, Vic is the only person Aj trusts, or Oz is the only person Vic should trust, and you know because of sort of a boy who cried wolf scenario. Like if Oz continues to prove that he's not trustworthy, like there's no reason for Vic to believe that he is, and to see how that continues to unravel will be a real focal point of next the next few episodes and the rest of the season. Something I wanted to flag too before we get to that insane ending, which is definitely worth talking about, is
Hmm.
something that might be, I don't even know if I want to call it a criticism, but might be like one of my only sort of nitpicks or like really intriguing points that I'm still not really sure what they're doing with, is like this recurring trend of the Penguin moniker sort of being an insult to Oz, and
Hmm.
like trying to kind of wrap my head around like, is this something that Oz likes being called? It seems to be something that he doesn't, slash like it's an insult that is sort of shared amongst the Falcones. Like, is he going to adopt this Penguin moniker or not? Like, is he going to use it as sort of a reverse gotcha thing where when he takes power, like he does become this thing that everybody sort of used as an insult to him? Like, I'm still a little lost on like what they're kind of doing with the Penguin namesake,
Hmm.
and like how Oz feels about it, unless maybe I'm missing something or forgot something. I'm not sure.
No, I think that it is definitely. I do think it's something that he does not appreciate at all, and I think it will be what you said in the fact that when he gets to that power position, he will adopt it as like a middle finger to everyone and be like, "You wanted to use this to kind of put me down and treat me as lesser, and now I'm genuinely better than all of you, and I'll use that as something to be like to rub in their faces essentially, even though I have to assume by that point most of them will probably be dead." um, but yeah, that, and then also before we move on to the big wild finale of this episode, this is a brilliant use of the Hangman like moniker and
Mhm.
idea just from the comics. Like it's a great adaptation and use of that concept and fitting it and retooling it for the story that's being told in this universe. Like it's a genuinely perfect way for them to use those narrative pieces from the comics and integrate it into a way that just benefits all of the characters that we're seeing and focusing on, in a really like streamlined way and way that makes sense for this world. I'm thoroughly impressed with the way that they did that. So that was just really cool to see.
Yeah, can you enlighten me and the audience a little bit about the Hangman in the comics?
Yeah. So the Hangman in the comics is essentially, and I'm a little bit rusty on this because I haven't read Dark Victory in quite a while. But so the Long Halloween is the murders that happen each month on the holidays, and that was for 12 issues where they did that. And so that's when the ending of that is a little like iffy because the story is like ambiguous slash like hints to a couple of different people maybe being the holiday killer. But Dark Victory is the sequel to the Long Halloween, and that's when you get the Hangman killer. And so the Hangman killer is someone who's essentially doing the same thing, except they're leaving a like hangman, the like game drawing
Mhm.
thing at each of the crime scenes. Um, and that's kind of how they're doing that. And in that one, if I'm remembering correctly, Sophia is revealed to be the Hangman killer in that. Um, and so I want to say it's her. I also know though that Carla Vitti is very integral into that story, I believe. And so yeah, it's just the idea of like on the face value, whenever you're looking at it, like Sophia does appear to be like it does appear to be a kind of one-to-one adaptation in like the first half of the season where they're presenting her as the Hangman killer, and it's like, oh, okay, that's something that they're just taking directly from it. And then when they're able to switch that around and make it to where like it's not actually her and tie it back in with Falcone in a way that really makes a lot of sense and just wraps it more into the family. Because again, and the other thing is that in both the Long Halloween and Dark Victory, you have like all of Batman's rogues showing up essentially like at various points and all of them being in the mix of this huge like murder mystery thing going on. And so I think taking the key points of like Sophia and the crime families being involved and serial killings in a specific way and like the Hangman moniker being attached to Sophia, like all of those main elements that need to be there, taking those and then retrofitting them into a way that just makes sense for this world. I think they executed that really perfectly.
Yeah, No, that makes sense. Cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about the ending of this episode, which ties up a lot of bows for us. A lot of
Yeah.
speculation over the last couple weeks about, there's a lot of Falcones on the table. How is Penguin going to rise to power amongst all of them and overcome all this? And as Penguin says in the What's Next on the Penguin episode, or clip, he's like, Sophia Falcone just did us a big favor. And like, yeah,
Yeah, dude.
yeah, she did.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, really interesting stuff here. Being able to understand and explore like Sophia sort of enacting her revenge, which you kind of felt like the writing was on the wall for that, but to see it actually play out and kind of strategically, and there's still room for Johnny Vitti, which I think
Mhm.
is really interesting because they've set him up in a way that I think justifies him sort of being this isolated last standing figure. Um, we'll see. I'm a little like it might just be because they cast Michael Kelly, and
I feel like
you
that's
want to
definitely
utilize.
it.
I mean, also though, you would cast a strong actor in that character because you knew that character was going to be
Just gonna
important, right?
continue. Yeah.
But I think that there is something to the way that he's been set up more than like Uncle Luca or some of the other sort of figures in the Falcone family, and so I mean, he's gonna die next week, one way or another. It feels like. So we're just gonna have to
See,
wait to see what happens
I'm not
here.
convinced about that actually.
All right. Well, let's talk about it.
So I think I'll address that first, I guess, before the rest of the killings. I think that she'll use him to maintain control over the rest of the family. Not
Mm.
like the family, but like the
The
everyone that's
goons.
not, yeah, the goons, like all the thugs and all that stuff, like your stereotypical comic book goons.
Yeah.
Like I think that he'll be an important piece of that for her. And because also, I mean, she has been gone for 10 years and hasn't been running the family, right? And so
Sure.
he'll have a lot of stuff that will be useful to her.
That seems too
Um,
dangerous. That seems too like
I mean,
I don't know.
maybe.
We'll find out next week on the
Um,
Penguin.
yeah, though I that one I will say, like, on the whole, like, her mm, just absolutely offing the entire family. I knew they were all dead as soon as she walked into that room. Like she
Oh
walks
yeah.
into that room and you're like, oh, okay. It was at that point. It's just a matter of like, how is this going to happen,
Well, I
right?
think you knew they were all gonna die from the second that she takes the girl out. I think her name's Gia. I don't remember, but
Well, no, yeah,
spoiler.
that happens after though. Like
Oh,
she
I get.
walks.
Oh, you mean like Rocket at dinner?
Yeah, like when
Gotcha.
she
Okay.
walks into the dinner like scene, I'm like, oh, they're done. Like, there's no way she's walking into this room like this if she doesn't have a plan to kill literally all of them. And then as soon as the girl's removed, it's even more like, okay, they got the girl out of here so that she can kill all of them. But then,
Okay.
it doesn't happen until a little bit
She's
later.
not doing that girl any favors, man.
Yeah, that's another thing I thought about. I'm like, man, you just killed her mom. Like, I know she kind of had it coming, but like, damn, like,
Cousin Carla, man.
yeah, Carla's the worst though. So,
Oh.
um,
Well, that's
Carla's
not Carla Vitti. Maybe
wasn't it
there's
though?
two Carlas.
No, I'm pretty sure it was Carla Vitti.
Well, there is a Carla Vitti.
It's definitely her because she's one of the members of the family who gave the affidavit that said that.
Right. No, I know. I think there's two. I don't
Why is
know.
there going to be two? Why are they going to give us two Carla
I
Vittis?
don't know. You're right. You're probably right. But I don't think that's Johnny's wife because that's not Johnny's daughter. So maybe I'm just misremembering the cousin's name. Because
I don't know.
Carla Vitti is sleeping with Uncle Luca, or I guess was. Or no. Luca. I don't
Luca's
know.
wife is sleeping
Was
with
sleeping
Johnny
with
Vitti.
Vitti.
Johnny is cheating on Carla with Luca's wife.
Hmm.
It's the thing.
But is that Johnny's daughter? It doesn't matter. This is not the point of the podcast. Keep talking. Sorry.
But yeah, no, not doing the girl any favors. I was like, man, this is messed up. But yeah, her walking into that dinner scene, I loved also the moment whenever, like, I love how they all try to cut her off, and she's just like, "You can try it," essentially. Like whenever Johnny like, "All right, I think we've had it," and she just like looks at him and is like, "Go on," and he just shuts the hell up. Like it's so good. Like she absolutely commands that scene. I mean, she commands the whole episode, really. Not commands, because obviously she's not in control at Arkham, but like her performance.
Yeah. I mean, this
But
is her Emmy episode for what it's worth. We
100%.
really haven't talked enough about how good Kristen Milioti is this episode for what it's
Yeah,
worth.
that was one of the things I wanted to open the episode with and totally forgot of. Like, if she doesn't, nomination, at least she should win for this, though. Like, there's absolutely, this is just stellar stuff from her. She's
Took us
utter
45 minutes up into the episode for us to get to this point.
Hey man, we got there. Yeah, she's just ridiculous in this. Incredible. All of the positive adjectives that you can possibly think of apply here. Truly standout stuff. But yeah, her walking into that dinner scene, I was like, oh, they're all gone for sure. And yeah, the way that she does it is also incredibly smart. Just poisoning the entire house, which is very efficient way to do it, and I it really puts her in that position of like there's no one else to run the family now. It's all on her, which will be super interesting to see how she does that going forward. And yeah, like you were saying, where Oz now is like, okay, well, you just eliminated a lot of the people that were trying to get after me as well, so that kind of helps him a lot. I do think it's really interesting how much this season, I don't want to say like how quickly it's accelerated. I mean, it has like accelerated really quickly, but it's definitely not. I don't know what I was expecting for the like full season story of this, but it wasn't this, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Like, we're halfway through the show, by the way, and it's like, I have no idea what's going to happen now.
No clue. Like for the last 4 episodes, I know we get those like the little sneak peek thing and like seeing
Sure.
different shots, but I'm like, these can literally be anything happening. Like I know I'm watching specific shots.
You
of stuff,
convinced
but,
me
like,
for 3 episodes that she was the hangman, and now she's not. So I don't know what's going on.
right? Like it's really impressive and one of the best things to be at this point in the show and be like, I don't know what's going to happen by the end. I do though, am feeling pretty confident in Oz taking full control by the end of the season. I feel like
Yeah,
that's
I
doable.
feel a lot better about that opinion of yours after this episode.
I'm feeling good about that prediction.
That was a good take.
Yeah, so we'll see. I think that we can definitely get there. We got 4 episodes left. We got 4 hours. So that's plenty of time, I think, for him to be able to make some moves and get there. Do we think that she makes it out of this season?
There's no way. There's no way. There is no way that Oz
lets her live.
Yeah,
that's true.
But
I guess that's
maybe we could talk about it in speculation a little bit too. But like, it seems like though, even when Oz takes power, everybody's going to be substantially weakened. Like all of these crime families are going to be pretty ripped to shreds.
Yeah.
Which
you got to deal with the Maronis too, and like,
which is sounds like was going to happen next episode. So, you know,
yeah. What do you think about her? Her like, how many bodies is that? How many people are at the table? Probably like 10 or 11.
Yeah, I mean,
and then plus whatever guards are in the house. That's like a 20 to 30 kill. Like she just dropped a tactical nuke on.
You said earlier, like we're rooting for her, and I was like, I don't think I'm rooting for her, dude. Like I'm still not really on her team.
I am, man.
I'm still kind of on Team Oz over here. You know?
I mean, I'm also on Team Oz, but I mean in the sense of like that. Not to say that like killing 20 to 30 people is justified, but if you could look at a situation where you might be able to justify it, I feel like throwing someone into Arkham for 10 years is kind of, that might be grounds.
We'll see.
She didn't do anything, bro. She literally was like, she did nothing. She was for a second curious about the fact that her father might have murdered her mother.
I feel bad for her.
Then
she kills Magpie, and I feel a little less bad for her.
Dude, I mean, I guess Magpie didn't deserve it. Actually, no, Magpie probably did deserve it from what I know about Magpie.
All right. Well, hands up.
Yeah, I feel like she's kind of justified. Not that not that I'm advocating for murder, but you know.
But
but if I were to.
All right, let's get to speculation.
Yeah, so we're going to take a quick break, but afterwards we're going to speculate about what's next for the rest of season 1. We'll be right back.
Hey, Aspect listener, I'm Robbie.
And I'm Alex, enjoying the show here on the Aspect Network.
Then check out Framing the Force.
We are your one-stop shop for all things in a galaxy far, far away. Each week, we discuss everything from the latest news and releases to the hottest topics in the fandom.
Beyond the films and series, we share our thoughts on every corner of the Star Wars universe, from comics to video games to collectibles and everything in between.
Join us every week as we discuss one of the greatest franchises in film history here on the Aspect Network.
Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to The Aspect Reacts. Before the break, we discussed some of our favorite moments from tonight's episode of The Penguin. And to cap off this episode, we wanted to discuss what we think is next. Sean, where do you think the show goes from here now that we're officially halfway through?
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit before the break, but sounds like, and based on what we saw in the next clip, like now that the Falcons are dead, it's time to take out the Maronis, which is pretty crazy. Like to see Gotham's big crime families just like dropping like flies. Obviously, there's that shot that we got of Oz wearing the ring again, which I think is still in Sal's possession currently.
It is currently.
So that may be some clever flashbacking also. Like
That
it could be from before he gave the ring to Sal
And he
again.
was wearing the like his overcoat which I mean he wears that all the time, but that's a good point.
You know, it could be some clever mischief and some cutting. They certainly been doing a good job of that this season. But it seems like, you know, now Oz's plan is like, all right, well, if Falcons are dead, let's take out the Maronis and then we're going after Sophia, right? And there's still a lot that needs to be played out with Vic, and obviously then setting up the rest of the season for Oz versus Sophia, sort of gathering the troops, it seems. And some of the stuff on Oz's mother that I'll talk about a little bit after you share some of your thoughts.
Yeah, I do think, I mean, full out gang war from here on out, obviously, and taking out the Maronis. I do think, actually, I just thought about the idea that I know it's been called the Batman Epic Crime Saga, which I will say, terrible name for this. I respect the hell. I love Matt Reeves so much, but like, god damn, that is a mouthful and not a great name for something. Like, I get it and respect, but also, come on, man. But I know he's wanted to really like focus on the like crime ridden aspect of Gotham and like telling that story and all the crime families. But thinking about it now and looking at it through the lens of this show, it does almost feel like this show is doing the job of clearing the crime families out of the way so that we can get to the more colorful supervillains in Batman's Rogues Gallery, and that being like more of a focus and stuff.
That's so smart. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, as we
That's
get to
so
both
good.
2 and 3, because like then it's like, okay, well, like
It's
then you
just
don't have the,
Penguin in power.
yeah,
Who
like then you
cares?
don't have the question about like, yeah, what's up with all the like regular, like normal crime stuff in Gotham. It's like, oh well, they're all dead. We saw that in the Penguin, which is like generally in the comics the first like couple years that's what Batman's dealing with, and then he kind of deals with them, and that's when the more colorful people start showing up. And so I think that's
God,
kind
this
of,
show's so good. God,
I think
he's so good at this. Matt Reeves
like,
is sick, bro. Like,
I
oh,
think
you're
that's
like
kind of
you're
what
painting
happened.
this out for me in a way that like this makes so much sense.
Like now the pitch for why we're getting a Penguin show makes a lot of sense. It's like, well, instead of having to deal with clearing out the crime, like having Batman clear out the crime families, we'll have the crime families clear themselves out. Like, and in doing so, establish one of Batman's key Rogues Gallery members, like, and really put him in a spotlight that he hasn't had before. Like, I think I said this 2 weeks ago, maybe, or maybe I just said it whenever we were talking separately. This is the most I ever cared about the Penguin as a character. I think that you said it in like our opening episode. You were like, I don't know where he ranks on your like Batman rogues list, which for the record is not very high. Like to me, he's just always kind of been there. Like he has his thing, and he's a great Batman villain, but Batman just has so many great Batman villains, right? But I think that this show is doing a lot to it's doing a lot for the people who have been like, no, Penguin's the best. Like I see this and I'm like, all right, I see you, I get you now. Like, yeah, Penguin's pretty great. And
Out to that one
so
guy.
right. I know that the like 2 Magpie fans that exist were losing their minds at this episode. But yeah, I do think that that's what this show is doing, and it's getting through that kind of like normal crime level in Batman's world and Gotham's mythos, so that we can make way for stuff getting more wild as we move forward in the grander scheme of the universe. But yeah, for this season specifically, and what we're going to get in these later 4 episodes, um, God, I mean, like, besides everyone just fighting and killing each other, like, I don't know. We got that one shot of him, and I think this is partly what you were going to talk about when it comes to Oz's mom. But like, we have him throwing that vase of flowers in their house,
Mm,
is what it looked like, and I
yeah.
was like, that's interesting. I wonder what's going on there. Um, so I think that that's probably the biggest question mark as far as like guesses that I can make about things. Um, Besides that, everything is a question mark. Like, I don't really know what we're gonna get. It feels like Maroni has to die by the end of this. It feels like his wife has to die by the end of this. As you were saying earlier, like, it seems pretty unlikely that Sophia makes it out of this. I know a lot of people are convinced that Vic won't make it out of this either, that there's not gonna be like a spot for him in there. And so it's like, as Oz, I'm pretty confident that Oz is gonna be in total power by the end of this season. It's just a matter of how many other people are going to make it out alive, and it's kind of looking like basically no one, maybe. And so I don't know, seeing how all that's going to play out, I think is going to be fascinating to see. And it's really tough, I think, to make. It's honestly ridiculously impressive that we can have something that's being an adaptation of these comic books where we have so much source material to draw from, and like guesses that we can make as to where things can go in the future, because we know how certain story elements like generally lead into each other. And the fact that we have that context for this, and I'm still like, I got no clue like what the next 4 episodes are, like how they're going to play out, is just ridiculous and super exciting. I wish more things were like this.
Yeah, I mean, this show's phenomenal and, continues to elevate week over week, which is really impressive. And I think, bodes well for Reeves's universe and hopefully the future of DC Studios at large. Yeah, in terms of Oz's mother, I realized that, like, kind of what I was flagging has already sort of been buttoned up, but like, I imagine that she is going to be sort of a crucial factor in Sophia's revenge at some point. Obviously, like, Sophia doesn't know that she's alive, and I'm sure that revelation will happen at some point. But
You know
I don't
what?
know if it was you speculating or something I talked about last week. At some point we talked about, but like, he gave his mother one of Alberto's precious jewels and like jewel
Right.
necklaces.
Hmm.
And we had sort of maybe speculated that like Sophia was going to learn that Oz killed Alberto via that, which obviously is not going to happen now because she knows what happened.
Yeah.
But I still think that that's going to play a factor in some point. We talked about, or the show has really told us how important that jewelry was of Alberto's. And this episode, we didn't really get to hit on it, but only reinforced their relationship. And, he
Hmm.
was obviously a sleazebag, but also like seemed,
Genuinely cared about his sister.
yeah, which was cool.
That was a really good part of the episode, honestly. Like, I
Yeah.
was not expecting. Also, the shot of him when he's with the scene of him when he's with the lawyer, when they're first like telling her that she's going to be going into Arkham and stuff. There's a particular shot of him like hunched over in the outfit that he's in, where he's like a spitting image of how Alberto looks in The Long Halloween, which is
Hmm.
tough to do because especially with Tim Sale's art and how like exaggerated and stuff that is. I was like, oh man, they like nailed that.
That's pretty
That's the
cool.
most. Yeah, he like looked like him a lot there. I was like, that's nice.
That's really cool.
I will
And so,
say,
oh, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say before I forget, I do have a guess for that scene actually where Oz is throwing the vase. I bet he goes. I'm gonna throw this out there as a prediction. I'll
Sure.
probably end up being wrong,
I think
but
I know what you're about to say.
I
I
bet that he
almost said
goes.
it.
I bet that he goes to check on his mom and she's not there, and he's getting pissed about her not being there, and he's like, "Where the hell is she?" Because she's been kidnapped by Sophia. That's probably what's happening there.
Yeah, I wonder. I don't disagree with you because I also had that thought, but I
I
also
like,
feel like it's too early for that plot point. Maybe the
yeah,
Maronis took her. I don't know.
possible.
Well, no, it's a good guess. I just like, I feel like that's some finale and penultimate stuff of like, we feel like we got to hit a few points on the map before we can get there. But yeah, I mean, the beauty of this episode is that it gives us a lot of context, and sets us up a little bit for the future, but doesn't give us as much room to speculate. We've been doing a lot of like Batman 2 chatter again, just
Hmm.
because of the way that, again, I don't feel as bad about it now that the show continues to be super interconnective to Reeves's universe at large, and clearly is setting something up for the future of this universe.
Oh,
Which is
0%
nice.
chance that we see Batman in this show.
Oh
Absolutely
yeah,
not going to happen. No way.
yeah, no, that's fair. No, I mean, I got that after like episode 1. I lost a lot of weight.
'Cause I do remember
Uh-huh.
before the show, you were like, I still, even though Matt Reeves was like, Batman doesn't show up in this, you were like, I don't believe him fully.
Would be cool though.
It's
Right at
not,
the end,
I mean, I
Oz.
guess it'd
Could you
be,
imagine if Oz gets into power at the end? Batman swoops in, is like, just kidding. Yeah, I got you, Oz.
uh,
Man. You're
yeah,
right though. Maybe
yeah, it
Bruce
just,
Wayne shows up.
that'd be cool. That actually is also possible because he did say Batman doesn't show up. So,
I don't think
I
that's
doubt it
happening
though.
either though.
Yeah, there's no way.
And I wonder if, as the gang war continues to erupt, if we'll get to start to see some larger elements of Gotham, and kind of what the state of things are. Obviously, we're pushing into winter, and I would love to
Still got to
see,
see
like,
that shot of Gotham in snow.
yeah, I'd love to see, if it makes sense for the story, really. Like, I'd love to see some more interconnectivity between like Maya Real, and seeing what she's up to, and like they've teased a little bit of that, but like some appearances from her, or just kind of seeing the larger city, and kind of how things are progressing would be interesting. I really appreciated some of the interconnectivity they've done with like the Riddler and his followers, and some of the other stuff like that. It'll be interesting to see how like grand of a scope they get as we push into the back half of this. It's been much more contained these last couple episodes, which I'm certainly not complaining about.
Hmm.
But it'll be interesting to see how much they play with that as we push forward. But I feel like we don't have a ton to speculate on at this point, just because we've had a lot of questions answered, and now it's a lot of what's going to be next, but not in a way that we have any idea about.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, more violence is about as far as my
Yeah.
my guesses go.
Any last thoughts before we wrap this one up? This is a long one this week.
Yeah, there was a lot. There's a lot to dive into. No, I don't think so. I think we hit on most of it. Um, yeah, just it's unbelievable that this episode, or that this show, feels like it gets better with each episode. And then when I also like think back on the episodes, I'm like, oh, but this one, like, maybe it was it. They've all just been like 10 out of 10 episodes. Honestly,
Yeah,
they've just been fantastic. It's great stuff.
absolutely. Awesome. All right. Well, cool. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in to this week's episode of The Aspect Reacts. Alex, where can people find you online?
You can find me online at the Alex Batts. It's BATTS on both Twitter and Instagram.
Cool. And please be sure to subscribe here to The Aspect on YouTube and wherever podcasts are found. Follow us on Twitter /X, Instagram, and TikTok at The Aspect Co. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.